Hey there, this is Darren, founder at Denzity. Welcome to Denzity Insights, where we interview real estate experts for their expertise and opinions and help you to learn more about all things real estate. Welcome to the finale of our 3-part miniseries about Australian real estate. In this episode, we zoom in on the Melbourne property market, key differences between main metro areas, and end on the nationwide trends that any investor must be aware of. We're honored to have Terence Cheung as our guest for the third and final segment of the series, and hope that you enjoy his insight as an overseas investment specialist. Hope you enjoy. As always, you can find everything we mentioned in this episode in the show notes, including our thoughts, more about the guests, and all the tips and tricks. If you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button like you mean it to get our regular updates. Now, take a deep breath and buckle up for the show. Hope you enjoy. Hey Terence, so with the first episode we talked about overview Australia.
Yep.
And just now we talked about Sydney for this last episode, and then obviously kind of not talk about Melbourne. So in Melbourne, what's going on? And then for Hong Kong investors looking to Melbourne, what are the places that they usually invest in? What type of property are they?
Melbourne 同 Sydney 差唔多 ，in terms of 個 local market 係非常之熾熱啦，暫時都咁本地嘅 demand is driving property prices up. In terms of 香港客揾 Melbourne 一般都係自住比較多 ，so most of them are looking for townhouses as opposed to apartments. 傳統嘅 investment 唔係 investment 啦，香港客 traditionally 會係睇開墨爾本市中心嘅東區 ，because 好多嘅 grammar school 啊、private school 或者比較好少嘅學校咧，都係喺墨爾本嘅東邊嘅，係啦。
I see. So you know, like Melbourne is very different than Sydney, right? So people who are like interested in Melbourne but they don't know how to think about what Melbourne looks like, how will you compare that with Sydney?
Melbourne 個 concentration of the CBD is much smaller， 即係唔係 it's more concentrated. Sydney 係 more scattered， 即係你可以大好多啦。咁有好多唔同區份，即係可能話有少少似 Toronto， 你住 Scarborough， 你未必會去到Mississauga 嘅細啦，你可能話1個月去一次。Whereas 即係好似 Sydney 咁啦，Sydney 可能話你喺 Epping， 你可能未必會去到Bondi 咁樣 per se， 即係佢每一個社區、每一個小區都個完善係比較配套，因為地方大。Right， 咁比較 scattered。Melbourne 係比較細少少嘅 ，so everything is more sort of compressed, right? The CBD is this, and the central business district is here. You're not going to go too far from this. That's a major difference, right? 咁 actually 呢幾集裏邊亦都冇去講一個比較，如果你話係做 investment。而家比較 hot 嘅一個 topic 就係一個澳洲政府呢個聯邦政府 is a nationwide thing， right？ 係呢個special disability accommodation， 即係政府有個 program 叫做 NDIS National Disability Insurance Scheme， 係保障係希望資助一啲有 disability 嘅人去生活。生活包括日常嘅衣食住行，咁住宿係最緊要啦。咁我哋個 industry 就係住宿啦。咁就係話政府會資助一啲殘障人士去租屋住。咁呢啲屋係specially construction and design for people who are in need of care to live in them. These houses 係nationwide, they have it all across Australia. The industry is still at its infant， 即係啱啱開始嘅啫。咁13年開始呢個 legislation， 咁差不多去到1920年咧，先至正式推。 咁而家我哋預計未來呢個 industry 咧係值 I think it's somewhere between north of 12 billion Australian dollars in value in the market, and we are getting a lot of individual investors to look into this market. 因為第一yield type, you're achieving a net yield of somewhere between 7 至 8%. 第二, a lot of that yield is secured by government funding. 咁有政府資助嘅嘢，咁就有個投資價值啦。Last but not least, 我哋而家起嘅屋仔 for 呢啲殘障人士，嗰塊地係好值錢，地嘅升幅係如果你睇翻澳洲 historic 嘅數據咧，每一個 city 每一個省份都好啦，平均每7年你塊地就會 double in value, right? So there's a lot of this is like a good capital appreciation as well as a good rental yield.
I see. No, it's very attractive. And in terms of like the project you have on STA housing, is it in Melbourne or somewhere else? Like where's the location is?
Sydney 又有 Melbourne 又有 Queensland 都有。其實呢個 scheme 係 nationwide 嘅。
I see.
係啦。咁所以係咯，即係可能話有啲投資客，我唔想要維省，我唔想要 Melbourne， 我要 Queensland， 我要 New South Wales， 咁我哋都有嘅。So it's a federal thing, right? So we provide accommodation all around Australia.
I see. Before I thought of like, why not we have Sydney and Melbourne, kind of like that, right? But it sounds like you have a lot of knowledge about even navigating the wider Australia, right? So let's say if someone say, okay, you know what, Melbourne, Sydney are not meant for me. I want something higher yield. Let's go to somewhere outside of those cities. How will you navigate? Like, so I know that, for example, Adelaide, Brisbane, I think even Perth, or people look at, right? Yep. So what are the few cities that you recommend to look into, and how would you differentiate them?
我諗個問題嗰個問題就係話個 yield 差唔多㗎啦，因為 the government funding is based on how many participants you can put in these houses, right? But then the cost of entry is different across different cities. 咁 for example, Perth 同埋 Adelaide， 咁個地平啲嘅，咁你個基數低啲，咁你個升幅個 potential 個 capital growth 咪大啲咯，係即係可能話10萬好容易去到20萬，但係50萬係咪好快去到1 mil 咧？It's the same thing, right? So, but then the yield's the same. You're still getting a good yield because ultimately, having a disabled person living in Adelaide, having a disabled living in Melbourne, they still need the same care. They still need the same services, right? But the living standard's a little bit slightly different. Your yield on your money that you pay is the same, but then is they get gains from your capital appreciation perspective that could be different.
I see. Wow. That's a pretty good way to look at it. And then for Melbourne, right? Something that like I want to know more because I always feel that like Melbourne is kind of like the city where it's more relaxed than Sydney, it's more spread out and everything. Like in your perspective, right? Because Sydney is easy, you said before, is that according to infrastructure, you see where the subway is, then you go for those.
Yep.
For Melbourne, what are the signals that you consider investors to look into?
我諗學校咯，區分即係學校好緊要咯 ，right？ I think put it in your perspective would be Sydney is more Toronto and Melbourne is Vancouver.
I see. Now I can see because like I'm from Toronto, Vancouver too. Yeah. So I guess in the analogy, people from the US would be LA and New York, I guess. And then it will be like, let's say, Shanghai and Beijing, that's how you look at it. Yeah. I see. So, just now you talked about, your website, and then also yourself, you can reach out to you. What are some tips that you can suggest to the audience when they want to learn more about Australia as a whole, the markets? What's the best way?
Well, I think with any market, with anything around the world, I think you can read the local newspaper, right? I think that's key, right? And then there's a few newspapers for Australia. The Age, the Herald Sun, the Australian Financial Review will give you a good insight as to what's happening in Australia. Realestate.com.au gives you a snapshot of house prices across Australia and its auction clearance rates. I think that's where I'm going to start.
I see.
Yeah.
And you know how, like, just before we talked about this whole episode, like the filming, you're really into tech. You believe in tech, how you get access to information. How do you feel about that? Like property tech, I know I'm really big on PropTech, it's my thing. And then from your perspective, how do you think of it?
Tech has become in every part of our life, right? I'm not sure, what age group or year you were born, but I think I was, I'm in the 80s. What are we? Gen Y? Gen X?
Gen X.
Gen X.
I think that's the one, yeah.
So we went from a 36-bit modem, where when we use it, when we get a phone call, it cuts on my internet, to the point where you get 5G on your mobile phone, right? I'm just trying to blend in, combine the old and the new. A lot of these tech businesses are always constantly raising capital, losing money. We're growing a database, we're growing user experience, we're growing users. I'm more used to, hey, I spend $1, I want $3 back. But that's not going to get your multiplier. And you can't grow too big from there. But at the same time, I think the days of burning money, growing a number of users, that's long gone as well, right? So through me born in the 80s and not too old to understand the new world, I want to learn the best of both worlds and see, how we could create a new form of investment, right? It's like combining Michael Jordan's fadeaway with Stephen Curry's, logo shots. If you get the both worlds, mate, you become unguardable. Yeah.
So should we expect like an app, like a database from you guys? What are you guys planning to do?
I think it will be a combo of a few things.
Okay.
Database, app, but again, I think real estate is always very old school. Going back to when we first mentioned about us, who we are, deep roots, local expertise. If we have deep roots, local expertise, plus a technology platform that allow people to access information a lot easier, I think that you have a winning formula.
I see. No, I think it's a great way because I always, we believe in transparency, and then having that technology have direct access, being transparent, having better experience, I think that's the way to go. So I want to say here, thanks so much for doing this series with us.
Thank you.
It means a lot to us. No, and then let's do round 2 very soon. And then I really, really appreciate this opportunity together.
Thank you, Darren.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Majority of you don't stick around this far. So we're flattered and truly appreciate your attention. To return the favor, let us tell you our thought on this episode. In our final episode with Terence, we began our discussion with Melbourne, but the conversation soon opened up to include macro trends such as federally sponsored disability housing and the need for stronger tech platforms. In any region, understanding the difference in infrastructure, culture, and way of life between the main cities can mean the difference between a good or bad investment. Australia is no different. Whereas Sydney is sprawling, Melbourne is concentrated, with a much smaller central business district. Comparatively, Melbourne has slightly smaller homes, which appreciate successfully if near schools. Meanwhile, the growth of specialist disability accommodations is applicable to not only Melbourne, but the entire nation. If real estate companies can develop projects that both care for those under the government program and at the same time earn almost double yield, is a win-win. When much of the world is grappling with a pandemic, with citizens increasingly voicing frustration, it is refreshing to hear of concentrated steps that a government is taking to subsidize and encourage growth in both community and business. There are many more developments to come, and stay tuned for relevant content. So concludes our 3-part series with Terence Cheung, but for any questions and comments, please do not hesitate to reach out. And as always, we hope you learned something. We have a more detailed version of our thoughts in the show notes. Beside that, you can find more about the guests and all the tips and tricks we have mentioned in the show notes too. Well, what do you think? Let us know in the comment section. Fun fact, do you know that more than 85% of you have subscribed to this show yet? Subscribe now to keep getting good stuff from us. Thanks for watching. What do you think of this episode? Please let us know in the comment below, and be sure to hit the subscribe button to keep in touch with us for upcoming videos. But before we go, I want to give a big shout out to Patina Design Lab. They're the one who help us in making our brand, our direction, as well as these videos. They are a strategic design consultancy firm to help businesses with a wide range of design services, from industrial design, branding, graphic design, art direction, content creation, and many more. They are a very talented bunch, and I urge you to check out their website for their work. That's all for today, and see you next time. Cheers.